I was hoping we were going to get a chance to explain this one with a podcast, but as I said, due to schedules and everything else that happened, weren't able to. But I was putting together the list for the best horror video game, and I found myself really quickly like, holy shit, I'm way more than 64 games, which that's the limit for the bracket, the way we do the system. And then I quickly realized, like, man, I really need to split these up. And I was trying to, like, okay, maybe I'll pare it down to the bare minimum of 64. Couldn't do that. And then even getting it down to, 64, maybe a 32, couldn't do that. So at one point I just said, you know what, I'm going to find a generation to just cut it off and say from here forward, this is bracket 1. Then do another bracket, pick the top 16 winners from both of those, and have them compete against each other in the final bracket. So it's kind of like older generation, which goes up to the PS1, which is this part 1 that we just completed, or 2 weeks ago, and then all PS2 generation and forward for the current bracket that's going on, and voting ends on Sunday. So, with all that shit being said, Jim, were you shocked at all by the winner of this first bracket?
Actually, well, first I want to say thank you for the 2,100 total votes that came in for this one. A very popular bracket. And to answer your question, nah, not really. Actually, when you look at the top 5, there's no... Maybe number 2, I'd say, just because it's maybe not a traditional horror game, but outside of that, I mean, it's just such an all-time game, I guess, then what are you going to do? But, I mean, any one of these games, really.
And let me address something before we go into the winners. It was really tough for me to pick what's horror, what's not horror. I tried to keep it fair, but some people might feel I left some things out. I think I was tended to be a little more inclusive than I probably should have been. But I wanted to make sure like I really grasped anything that could be considered horror. So with that being said, this one I'll give a proper top 10, and I'll go from number 10 down. And Jim, just jump in on any of them, but I'll probably just kind of go through. Coming in number 10, we have Castlevania Symphony of the Night. Obviously the one that changed the style of all Castlevanias moving forward to that Metroidvania style. Yeah. So not shocked about that. Number 9, Resident Evil 3 Nemesis, a classic, part of the great trilogy, so wasn't shocked there. Number 8 shocked the shit out of me, to be honest. Super Ghouls and Ghosts. For those of you who don't know, that's a Ghosts and Goblins sequel on the Super NES. It's a good game, solid, but how it beat out some of the others in this list is kind of beyond me, so...
Actually, because I'll say for that one, because it's a good game on top of having all the horror elements. This next one, I don't know how the hell this made top 10.
Jesus Christ. Number 7 is Friday the 13th on the NES, which...
Why?
The only thing I can say is probably people who absolutely love nostalgia. And let's face it, the NES doesn't exactly have a good library of horror games. And I captured almost every horror game on the NES in this bracket. What's funny is I've played this in Nightmare on Elm Street. Nightmare on Elm Street is actually a better game. But there is something kind of oddly appealing about how... I don't even want to use the term bad, but how weird Friday the 13th is. I think it's just people who love Jason and put that vote in there. Because that's the only reason I can kind of guess why that's that high. But, yeah.
I just don't know.
Doesn't make sense, but that's why I love these brackets. Isn't always going to make sense. Coming in at number 6, which I absolutely love, is Super Castlevania 4. So it was the highest Castlevania game on this particular list. And I've said multiple times that's my favorite Castlevania game. It's apparently most people's favorite Castlevania game. So, not a shocker.
I'm surprised it beat Symphony of the Night a little bit.
Yeah, some people I think tend to jack off Symphony of the Night a little too much. It's a much deeper game, but I don't like that play style as much as I like just the straightforward elements of 4. So
fair.
Number 5, Resident Evil 1. So definitely happy it's up there. Wish it was a little bit higher, of course, because that's my personal bias, and that was my pick for number 1. And Jim, if we get to your pick, I don't even know what you picked. You can say what your pick is for number 1, unless we already passed it.
Todd in the chat just went, really, that piece of shit to Friday the 13th.
Yeah.
And I think I saved a screen cap of my overall winner, so I'm going to try and find that on my phone quick.
Okay. Number 4, Zombies Ate My Neighbors. Of course, of the 16-bit era of co-op games, this is just the most well-known, most fun, and deserves to be this high for sure. Number 3,
yeah, definitely.
Number 3, Silent Hill. This one's a little interesting that it beat out Resident Evil, in my opinion. I know some people love the Silent Hill series more than Resident Evil. We've kind of gone over it a few times. But it's still one of those situations where, yeah, I don't know. I have bias for Resident Evil, but I'm shocked it's at number 3. Not shocked it's in the top 5. I would just swap where Resident Evil 1 and Silent Hill are, and I think it would make more sense. I don't know. What do you think about that, Jim?
I think, especially in this bracket, Resident Evil was competing against itself a lot.
Yeah.
But, I mean, they're different games, and Silent Hill really is a mind fuck, to put it lightly. So, I mean, it's a great horror game.
Yeah, for sure.
So, I mean, and considering the fact that people, I guess it depends on what kind of play style you like more. So, I guess more overall, Resident Evil style, I guess, just judging by the votes for all the games. But for what it does, Silent Hill just does it so well.
Yeah. Number 2, the one we're both kind of shocked about, and the one I struggled if I was going to put in here, is Doom. There's no doubt Doom is an amazing game. Is it horror? Well, to me, the fact that you're going around and you see Marines' insides torn out all over the place, and you're going through hell and you're fighting demons. Sure, it's just a shooter, and you're clearly not scared of them, and it's not survival horror in any sense of the manner. I said, fuck it, I'll throw it in there. To me, it kind of fit the bill for horror, so not shocked they made it to number 2. I was afraid it was going to kind of throw the bell curve for the whole kind of bracket, which it did, because I think people more or less voted on what game they think is the best, not necessarily what they think is scariest or horror. But that's why I also don't give guidelines when it comes to voting. I'm not trying to suggest vote one way or the other. So,
well, you know what? Screw those invisible imps. They scared the shit out of me when they surprised me.
Do you go poopy?
Maybe a little bit. I mean, the game can be scary. You go down the wrong hallway, and all of a sudden there's a homunculus shooting gigantic fireballs at you, and all these different hell spawns.
Definitely,
it's got the horror elements there.
Jump scare. Yeah, I looked at it, like I said, it was more like, oh man, the atmosphere and what you're dealing with, that's freaky. So I looked at it like that.
You know what game does that with Doom is like Doom 64. It's a lot, because I think what takes away a lot of the horror away from Doom is the soundtrack, which, don't get me wrong, all-time soundtrack. But Doom 64 has like a more atmospheric kind of thing with how it's a remake of original Doom. So that can show you how it can be a little more scary if you put the right music to it, really. Or the right sound engineering.
And number 1,
that aside,
not shocked in the very least, is Resident Evil 2. Widely regarded as potentially the best Resident Evil. It's debatable between that and some people pick 4, which I think is a little nutty. But regardless, 2 is a masterpiece. And although I have a ton of bias for the first one, I recognize in every sense of the word 2 is a much better game. There's all those different the 4 different ways really you can play it. The stories just expand it. The worlds expand it. There's more guns. There's just everything Resident Evil 1 did, but better. So, not shocked at all.
Yeah, no shock here.
So, Jim, what did you figure out? What did you pick as number 1?
I'm pretty sure I had the original Resident Evil as 1.
Jim, then me and you vote the same.
Oh my god.
That's one of the first times. No, well, we did it to beat 'em up.
Oh, yeah, but that was also that was more of a no-brainer, I think.
Yeah.
This could have gone a lot of different ways.
Yeah, for sure.
But let's look at the bottom here. And actually, it's funny with the bottom of this bracket because it's the first time I think I've seen 0 votes for an entry.
So, Jim, I made the mistake of just closing this. So you go ahead and read off what the bottom is. So start with go from the top of the 5 down to the last one.
All right, so coming in at number 60, Bram Stoker's Dracula on the Sega Genesis. I
played it.
A great movie.
It's
kind of a crap game. Not awful, but
it's bad. The control's really bad. It's just the levels are kind of blah. It makes sense that it's pretty low.
Next up is Martian Gothic Unification on the PS1, which I've never heard of.
I'm shocked because that's a game that's actually widely regarded as a really good game, but it's one of those situations where no one played it, so yeah.
Gotcha. Coming in at number 62 is The Seventh Guest on PC, or like I own it on the Philips CDI.
Dude, that I'm amazed. The number of people I talked to who were like, either that was their number 1 or it went really high on their list. I was like, how the hell did that not get higher than the bottom 5? I've played it.
That was such an important game for horror games, too.
It's so goofy. It's so, I don't know.
And for FMV, it started the FMV craze almost.
Yeah.
But, hey.
It is very goofy.
Relic, I guess.
It's very goofy, but yeah, I guess. I don't know.
All right, following up on that, Shadow Man for PS1 and N64.
Man, that was a game I looked at, and still to this day, I'm like, for some reason, I imagine, what was that movie that Billy Zane was in? The Phantom? When he was in, like, purple?
Oh, yeah.
So, for some reason, I thought the guy from Shadow Man kind of looked like him, but with, obviously, the skulls. It was kind of like Vin Diesel and Billy Zane combined, if that makes any sense.
Well, there must be a big Billy Zane fan out there to give it its only vote. And rounding it out with 0 votes. 0.
This is amazing.
Darkseid 1 on the PS1.
Dude, 0 votes is insane. Because we had, like Jim said, 2,100 votes on this. Now, one person could be like... And I pitted it against Darkseid 2, which Darkseid 2 was the game that, like... I'll be honest, I never played, but I'm very well aware of its popularity and whatnot. But it's one of those situations where I'm like, somebody's got to like Darkseid 1. Apparently nobody does. So, well, fuck that game, I guess.
Yeah. I never played either of them, so...
Yeah.
It didn't get a vote for me, I'll say that.
Well, you're not allowed to play games, so... Yeah, so thank you guys for voting. I hope you're going to continue voting as much as you did, if not more, for the second round. And like I said, the top 16 of this bracket are going to move on to the final bracket the week of Halloween. So we'll have to really get to see what's going to be voted as the best horror game ever.